A number protects everything in our digital lives today. And somewhere, that very protection we rely on every single day. And that protection is finally starting to fail us, colder than the vastness of deep space itself. Different enough to break the internet's lock. They call it Q-Day. It's the moment the lock opens. There was absolutely no warning for what was coming. There is a race happening in the shadows for secrets. Just secrets becoming readable to everyone. One-way math built the foundation of the modern internet. Now someone has finally found the way back to the start. Cables pulsing with the flow of unrestricted data. The foundation of our digital trust is gone. The machine doesn't just guess our passwords. It attacks the very structure of the math itself. Scientific precision leading to total compromise, existing in all states at the exact same time. Data stolen today is a gold mine for tomorrow. The data stolen today doesn't need to matter just yet. Only a matter of time before the lock breaks. Data is being harvested when the lock finally breaks. Some secrets simply do not ever expire. They wait in the shadows for the right moment. Some secrets don't expire, they just wait for the day. Wait for Q-Day to reveal the hidden code. The public race isn't the real race at all. Unmarked vehicles entering a guarded facility at night. The real race stays hidden from the public. Hidden. Entire facilities exist for one reason. They store everything and simply wait. Everything is marked for future decryption. We just have to wait for the moment. Hospitals are only planned for the world of today. The scale of our personal history is at risk. Encrypted medical data is waiting to be read. Secrets breaking decades after they were stored. Entire nations are chasing this single machine. This isn't just for the sake of science. This isn't for science, it's for absolute leverage. This race isn't about the size of the machine. It's about making the machine actually work in our world. A race for making the machine actually work for us. National laboratories under the shadow of the race. Nobody ever announces their quantum breakthroughs. People hunt for even the smallest clues. They hunt for clues in the digital noise. People hunt for even the smallest clues in the noise. No explosion, no headline, just the sound of progress. Just one calculation changing everything for everyone. Just one calculation changing everything now. Changing everything. The long waiting finally ends right here. The automated retrieval of our collective history. The archives are finally open for the entire world. The vast archives are finally open to the world. Chaos arrives quietly in the early morning hours. Then everyone asks the exact same thing. Everyone asks the same question. When trust collapses, the old systems are forced back. Old systems are starting to come back now. The manual systems are the only ones we can trust. When trust collapses, the old systems come back. The breakthrough becomes the most valuable asset. Militarized checkpoints protecting the prize inside. The breakthrough becomes the prize. The prize is hidden behind these heavy doors today. The systems built early are the ones that survive. Preparation is the key to future power. Preparation becomes the ultimate power. Preparation becomes the ultimate power on Earth. Every era trusts its digital locks. Every era is eventually proven wrong. Every era is eventually proven wrong here. Every era is eventually proven wrong. Right now, a number is protecting your bank account. It is protecting your government secrets. It is protecting every war plan, every trade deal, every private message on Earth. And in a lab most people have never heard of, that number is about to stop being safe. Every secure system you use runs on one quiet assumption, that certain math problems are too hard for any computer to solve in time. For 50 years, that assumption has held. It is now being tested by a machine that doesn't compute the way anything before it ever has. This is what a quantum computer looks like up close, colder than deep space, quieter than a vacuum. Inside it, particles do something classical machines cannot, and that difference is enough to break the lock the entire internet depends on. Encryption is not just for spies anymore, it is the seal on every hospital record, every power grid, every border crossing on the planet. One mathematical trick holds all of it together, and somewhere right now, someone is racing to break that trick first. They call the day it happens Q-Day. No press conference, no countdown, just one moment when a machine quietly reads what was never meant to be read. This is the story of the race to that day, and who stands to win it. To understand the threat, you have to understand the lock itself. In the 1970s, 3 researchers solved a problem that changed the world. They found a mathematical one-way street, easy to walk down, nearly impossible to walk back up. Multiply two enormous prime numbers and you get a new number in an instant. But hand that result to anyone else, and finding the original primes again could take longer than the age of the universe. That asymmetry became the foundation of modern encryption. It's called RSA. It still protects most of the internet today. Every time you see a padlock icon online, this math is running underneath. Every card payment, every flight booking, every login, trillions of transactions a day, all resting on the same one-way street. It has held for half a century. That's about to change. Classical computers attack this lock the only way they can, by guessing. Billions of guesses a second for the most powerful machines on Earth. Even at that speed, breaking a modern key would take longer than recorded history. That is the wall every hacker, every nation, every spy agency has hit for decades. Then, in 1994, a mathematician named Peter Shor found the crack in the wall. He proved that a quantum computer wouldn't need to guess at all. It could exploit the structure of the problem itself. On paper, it was a death sentence for the lock, decades before the machine to do it existed. For 30 years, Shor's algorithm sat in the world of theory, a loaded gun with no one able to pull the trigger. Building a machine stable enough, large enough, accurate enough to run it seemed almost impossible. Almost. Over the last decade, billions of dollars poured into solving that problem. Governments, universities, private labs working in near total secrecy. The prize wasn't just scientific glory. It was the ability to read anything, anywhere, that anyone thought was safe. Not every lab chasing this breakthrough makes headlines. Some are buried inside defense budgets, behind classifications that never reach the public. The compute power being built isn't just for science anymore. It's becoming a strategic asset, and strategic assets get hidden. Qubit counts that once took a decade to double now climb every year. Error rates that made quantum computers a laboratory, curiosity, are falling fast. Each improvement looks small on its own. Stacked together, they are closing the distance to a machine that actually works. Every few months now, a new milestone gets announced. A new qubit record, a new error correction breakthrough. Each one met with applause and a quieter question underneath it. How close is too close? And is anyone actually ready? The threat isn't only about the future. Encrypted data being stolen today doesn't need to be readable today. It only needs to still matter when the lock finally breaks. And some of that data is built to matter for decades. Think about what doesn't expire. Genetic records, state secrets, decades-long financial positions. A stolen, encrypted file today might be worthless tomorrow. Or it might be a time bomb set to go off the day the right machine switches on. Roughly 95% of international data crosses the ocean floor through cables like this one. Every government on Earth knows where they are. Tapping them isn't science fiction. It's been documented for years. The only thing standing between an intercepted signal and its secrets has always been the math. Quantum hardware itself has become something worth guarding like a weapon. Export controls now treat certain components the way nations once treated nuclear material. A chip the size of a coin can shift the balance of global power, and everyone capable of building one knows it. Governments have started treating this as more than research. Several have launched formal transition programs to replace vulnerable encryption before it's too late. The deadline isn't fixed. Nobody knows the exact day the lock breaks, which is exactly why the transition has become a race against an unknown clock. In 2024, after nearly a decade of public testing, new encryption standards were finally finalized, built specifically to resist a quantum attack. They represent the most significant rewrite of digital security in a generation, and almost nothing in the world currently runs on them. Switching the world's encryption isn't like installing an update. It means touching banking systems, power grids, hospital networks, and military infrastructure, all at once. Some organizations estimate the migration will take the better part of a decade. The quantum computers chasing them may not wait that long. Security experts have a name for this gap. They call it the harvest now, decrypt later window. Every year that passes without migrating is another year of exposed data quietly stacking up, and almost no one outside the industry has any idea it's happening. Financial institutions sit at the center of the exposure. Decades of trading positions, client records, and settlement data, all encrypted the old way. A single institution's breach could ripple through markets that never even saw the attack coming. This is why some banks have quietly begun their own migrations, years ahead of any mandate. Some nations are trying to coordinate the transition together. Shared standards, shared timelines, a united defense against a threat that respects no border. But cooperation has limits when the same breakthrough is also a weapon, and not every country plans to share what it builds. Outside the public roadmap, a parallel race is happening. State-funded labs with no published budgets and no public papers. Programs that exist primarily to make sure their nation crosses the line first. Because whoever builds a working machine first doesn't have to announce it to use it. Intelligence agencies have been collecting encrypted traffic for years, with no urgency to decrypt it yet. Patience is the strategy. Store everything. Wait for the machine. Decrypt at leisure. It's a bet that the future will eventually hand them the present's secrets. A new industry has formed almost overnight around this threat. Consultants, auditors, vendors selling quantum-resistant everything. Some of it is genuine engineering, some of it is fear sold as a product. Either way, the anxiety is real, because the underlying math problem is real. Critical infrastructure runs on encrypted control signals most people never think about. Power grids, water systems, industrial control networks built decades ago. Many were never designed with this threat in mind. Replacing their security isn't simple, and the window to do it safely is shrinking. Military communications carry some of the longest-lived secrets in existence. Troop movements may go stale in days. Strategic doctrine can stay relevant for decades. Defense agencies have quietly become the most aggressive adopters of post-quantum protection. Because for them, the cost of being wrong isn't measured in dollars. The talent chasing this breakthrough has become as contested as the technology itself. Universities, startups, national labs, all competing for the same small pool of specialists. Some nations have begun offering extraordinary incentives just to keep their best minds from leaving, because in this race, people are as strategic as the hardware they build. Private capital has poured into this race even faster than governments have. Billions of dollars chasing a technology that, for most of its history, did nothing commercially useful at all. Investors aren't just betting on computing power, they're betting on being early to whoever controls the next era of digital trust. No one can say with certainty when a machine capable of breaking real-world encryption will exist. Estimates range from a few years to over a decade. But every major estimate keeps shrinking, not growing. And institutions that plan in decades are starting to act like they have years. Somewhere tonight, that machine is getting one step closer to working. Somewhere tonight, encrypted data is being copied and stored just in case. The lock that has protected the modern world for 50 years is starting to show its age. And in the next part of this story, we go inside the campaign already exploiting that fact. Every signal, every secret, every transaction, all of it riding on a single mathematical promise. That promise held for 50 years. It will not hold forever. What happens next decides who controls the truth in a world without locks. Somewhere, a copy of your encrypted data already exists that you didn't make. It wasn't stolen to be read today. It was stolen to be read whenever the lock finally breaks. This is the campaign nobody announced, and everybody is already running. It starts at the cables themselves. Nearly all of the world's international data still crosses through physical points like these. A handful of choke points carry the financial, diplomatic, and personal communication of entire continents. Whoever can tap them doesn't need to break in anywhere else. Reports of seabed cable tapping have circulated for over a decade. Some confirmed, some denied, most never fully explained. The capability isn't new. What's new is the patience behind it. Because for the first time, intercepted data doesn't need to be useful immediately to be valuable. Storage has become cheap enough that holding everything is no longer a constraint. Entire data centers exist for the sole purpose of warehousing intercepted traffic. Not to analyze it now. Just to keep it safe until the tool that can finally open it arrives. This strategy has a name inside the security world. Harvest now, decrypt later, collect everything encrypted today. Cache it in the moment. A quantum computer makes the lock irrelevant. This is the unseen race for tomorrow's secrets. Some categories of stolen data are worth more the longer they're held. Genomic information doesn't change. A person's genetic code today is their genetic code in 50 years. Health records, family histories, hereditary risk, all of it stays relevant for an entire lifetime, which makes it one of the most attractive long-term targets in the entire harvest. Healthcare systems were never built to think about threats decades away. They were built to keep records accessible, not to anticipate a future where today's encryption fails. That gap has made hospitals one of the quietest, least defended fronts in this entire race. And the data inside them doesn't expire when the news cycle moves on. Governments hold their own version of this problem. Diplomatic cables, negotiation strategies, intelligence assessments meant to stay secret for generations. Some classification rules assume documents will remain sealed for 50 years or more. Those same documents may already be sitting in someone else's server, waiting. Diplomatic communication has always been a target. What's changed is the time horizon. A negotiating position from today could still matter in a renegotiation a decade from now. And intercepted cables don't need to be decrypted on the day they're stolen to be devastating later. Financial data carries its own long tail. Sovereign wealth positions, multi-decade pension obligations, long-term institutional strategy. Information that, if exposed even years from now, could still move markets or expose leverage. The clock on this kind of secret runs far longer than most people assume. Private banking exists partly on the promise of permanent confidentiality. Clients are told their information will never surface, not in 5 years, not in 50. That promise was built on encryption assumed to be unbreakable forever. Forever may turn out to be a much shorter word than anyone planned for. Military and defense technology blueprints sit near the top of every harvesting target list. Weapons design specifications, stealth technology, next-generation systems years from deployment. Even partial blueprints, decrypted years later, could hand an adversary a head start. That's a return on investment worth waiting for. Signals intelligence programs have operated this way for generations. Collect broadly, store indefinitely, decide later what matters. Quantum computing doesn't create this strategy. It simply gives it a payoff it never had before. Decades of patient collection are about to become decades of patient decryption. Corporate research isn't exempt either. Trade secrets, unfiled patents, formulas and processes worth billions. Industrial espionage used to require getting the secret out the door today. Now it only requires getting it out the door and waiting for the key. Pharmaceutical research carries enormous long-term value. A drug formula stolen today might not be useful for years until trials finish and patents file. By then, the encrypted files protecting that formula may no longer hold their secret. An entire industry's competitive edge can rest on this single assumption breaking. Some governments have begun briefing lawmakers on this exposure directly. Closed-door sessions, classified annexes, plain language about a threat with no clear date. The message is consistent across briefings. Assume your most sensitive communications today are already being copied somewhere else. Private cybersecurity firms have started tracking this behavior pattern directly. Unusual volumes of encrypted traffic being copied without any apparent attempt to use it. No ransom demand, no leak, no immediate exploitation. Just quiet patient collection, the signature of an actor playing a much longer game. For corporate security teams, this creates a strange new kind of breach. An intrusion where nothing visible was stolen and no alarm seemed urgent. Just encrypted files quietly leaving the network, headed somewhere with no rush to use them. By the time anyone notices what's missing, it may already be irrelevant who noticed. Insurance markets are beginning to price this risk into policies. Cyber insurance underwriters now factor in exposure windows that didn't exist a few years ago. How long has this client's sensitive data been encrypted with vulnerable methods? That single question is starting to change what coverage costs. Satellite communications add another layer to the harvest. Signals broadcast through open air are inherently easier to intercept than cables. Military, government, and commercial satellite links all carry exposed traffic. And listening has never required permission. Some collection doesn't even require sophisticated infrastructure. Mobile units, ships, and aircraft equipped with receivers can harvest signals passively. The barrier to collecting has fallen for years. The barrier to eventually reading what was collected is the only one still standing. Biometric and identity databases represent another long-tail target. Fingerprints, facial scans, and iris data don't change when a password does. A person can reset a stolen password in seconds. They cannot reset their own face. This data is a permanent biological identifier. Entire national identity systems now run on encrypted biometric backbones, built to verify hundreds of millions of citizens with a single secure database. If that database is harvested today and opened years from now, the exposure is permanent. It affects the identifiers behind the person. Some of the largest technology companies on Earth have already begun migrating their systems. Quietly, methodically, without much public fanfare, encrypting new data with quantum-resistant methods even while older archives remain exposed. It's an admission that the threat is already real enough to act on. New hardware is being engineered from the ground up around the new standards. Chips, routers, secure communication devices, all built to resist an attack. It's a strange kind of engineering, designing defenses for a weapon still being built. But waiting for proof has never been an option in this race. Global trade infrastructure runs on encrypted systems too. Shipping manifests, customs declarations, supply chain tracking, quietly encrypted. An adversary patient enough to wait years could map an entire nation's trade dependencies. Supply chains assumed private today could become an open book tomorrow. Academic institutions sit in an unusual position in this story. They publish the very research that both strengthens and threatens the world's encryption. Every breakthrough paper is read by defenders and adversaries alike. Open science has never been entirely neutral, and in this race, it can't be. Military communications at sea carry some of the longest operational shelf life. Submarine patrol routes, fleet positioning doctrine, encrypted command structures. If those systems are compromised retroactively, the damage isn't historical. It can still be operationally relevant the day it's finally read. Even satellites being built today carry this risk baked in before they ever launch. Encryption systems chosen years before deployment, designed to last. Some of those satellites will still be transmitting a decade or more from now. Built with a lock that may not last as long as the hardware protecting it, some institutions have begun preparing contingency plans for the day the lock fails. Manual backup procedures, analog fail-safes, systems outside the digital chain. It sounds almost old-fashioned in an age of quantum computing. But when trust in the lock itself is gone, oldest tools are safest. Policy researchers have started modeling just how much exposure has already accumulated. Years of harvested data, compounding quietly while the world debated timelines. Every projection agrees on one thing: the exposure is already substantial. The only disagreement is how much worse it gets before defenses catch up. Financial regulators have begun running their own version of a stress test. Not for market crashes, but for a sudden collapse of cryptographic trust. What happens if every encrypted transaction becomes provably exposed on the same day? Nobody has a complete answer. It would be the first day of a different crisis. Some of the most sensitive systems on Earth have started disconnecting entirely. Air-gapped networks physically isolated from the internet. It's a brute force solution to an elegant mathematical problem. When trust in the lock is gone, isolation becomes security. Right now, somewhere, an archive of encrypted secrets is quietly growing larger. Nobody can read it yet, nobody needs to, not today. They are simply waiting for the day the math runs out of time. The silent collection continues day after day across the world. The harvest has already happened. What's left is the wait. And the race to build the machine that ends it. That race isn't theoretical. In the next part, we go inside the labs competing to win it. The future is being calculated right now. This is not a science fair. Behind these walls, entire nations are racing toward a single machine. Not to win a prize, to win the ability to read everyone else's secrets first. And almost none of this race is happening in public. Some governments publish their quantum research budgets proudly. Others bury them inside defense spending categories that never get a public line item. The actual scale of state investment in this race may be far larger than any published figure suggests. Because admitting how much you're spending tells your rivals exactly how seriously you're racing. Inside these labs, the real competition isn't raw qubit count anymore. It's stability, error correction, the ability to keep a fragile quantum state alive long enough to actually compute something useful. Whoever solves that problem first doesn't just win a research milestone, they win the only thing that matters, a machine that actually works when it counts. The most valuable resource in this race isn't silicon or funding. It's the small number of people on Earth who actually understand how to build this machine. A single defection in this field can shift a research timeline by years. Nations have begun offering extraordinary incentives just to keep their best minds from being recruited away. Counterintelligence agencies have started treating quantum researchers the way they once treated nuclear scientists. Industrial espionage cases involving quantum research have already reached courtrooms. Stolen blueprints, smuggled components, intelligence warfare, background checks, travel restrictions, quiet monitoring of who they meet and where they go. The first working machine doesn't just advance science, it ends an era of global secrecy. Building the hardware itself requires an entire supply chain most people have never heard of. Specialized superconducting materials, ultra-pure isotopes, components manufactured in only a handful of facilities worldwide. Control over that supply chain has become its own form of leverage. A country that can't source the right materials can't compete, no matter how many researchers it employs. Export controls have expanded to cover materials and components specific to quantum computing. The same playbook once reserved for nuclear technology is now being applied here. Allied nations share access. Rivals get cut off entirely. It's a new kind of resource war. Fought over isotopes and superconducting alloys instead of oil. Every major intelligence agency now maintains its own private estimate. How close is each rival nation to a working machine? How much should that change our own timeline? These estimates rarely match the public research papers. Classified programs move faster and quieter than anything that gets published. The race is on, and the true leaders are often the ones you don't see coming. Some of the most advanced programs are built specifically to avoid detection. Remote locations, minimal staff, no public funding trail. The goal isn't just secrecy for its own sake, it's to make sure no rival nation can accurately gauge how close they really are. Hidden from the world, these teams are pushing the boundaries of what is possible. It's a strange kind of arms race, one fought almost entirely through inference. Satellite reconnaissance has become one of the few reliable ways to track this race from the outside. Unusual cooling infrastructure, unexplained power consumption, construction patterns that don't match any public project. Analysts piece together fragments, trying to estimate what they can't directly observe. That energy footprint is difficult to hide completely, even in the most secretive programs. Analysts have learned to watch power grids. Sometimes the clearest signal of progress isn't a press release. It's a spike on a utility chart. Public conferences still happen, and researchers still attend them, but the most sensitive findings rarely make it onto a poster board. What gets shared publicly is calibrated carefully. Enough to maintain prestige, not enough to give anything away. The surface of the conversation remains civil, academic, and open. But the real conversations happen afterward, behind closed doors, where the true breakthroughs are kept under lock and key. In the final part of the story, we find out exactly what winning actually breaks. The silence is over. Every major intelligence agency now maintains its own private estimate. How close is each rival nation to a working machine? How much should that change our own timeline? These estimates rarely match the public research papers. Classified programs move faster and quieter than anything that gets published. The race is on, and the true leaders are often the ones you don't see coming. Some nations have chosen cooperation instead of pure competition. Shared research facilities, joint funding, coordinated standards. It's a recognition that no single country can manage every risk of this technology alone. Transitions must be unified. Across borders, the brightest minds are working together to secure the future of global communication. But cooperation has clear limits whenever a breakthrough crosses from research into strategic capability. The secrets of tomorrow are being built in the silence of these corridors, away from the scrutiny of the world. The race is private. The date is set, the resources are allocated, and the finish line is coming into view for those who know where to look. Private companies have become major players in this race alongside governments, publicly traded, venture-backed, racing for commercial advantage. Some of their breakthroughs move faster than government labs simply because they answer to investors, not bureaucracies. The pace is relentless, driven by the dual goals of scientific achievement and market dominance. Governments have started quietly absorbing private breakthroughs into national programs, contracts, partnerships, classified briefings. The stakes are too high to leave breakthroughs in the hands of the market alone. Secrecy becomes the new standard. Some attacks succeed. Most are never publicly confirmed. The digital frontline is where much of the race is actually being won. Technicians work around the clock to repel intrusions and identify the source of the threat. It is a constant game of cat and mouse. In a race this valuable, theft is sometimes faster than research. The fastest way to catch up is to take what others have built. Some programs operate in deliberately remote, harsh environments, partly for security, partly for the unique needs of these machines. Massive cooling systems, stable power, isolation from interference of every kind. The hardware is as delicate as the secrets it holds. Logistics are a challenge, but the distance provides its own layer of protection. Out of sight, out of reach. The harder a location is to reach, the harder it is to watch. Secrecy is the ultimate defense in the quantum age. University labs remain a critical part of this race, even as secrecy grows around them. Foundational breakthroughs still come from academia. Funded by a patchwork of public and private sources, these labs are the engine of discovery, but they walk a careful line. Universities must be open enough to attract talent, yet careful enough not to hand away too much. The balance is increasingly fragile. It's an uneasy balance that gets harder to maintain every year as the strategic value of the work rises. Some countries have started restricting which researchers can work on the most sensitive parts of this technology. Visa reviews, topic restrictions. Background checks that didn't exist for academic research a decade ago are now standard. Talent is being sequestered by nationality. The global nature of science is clashing with the local requirements of national security. The tension is palpable in every hallway. Every restriction added slows collaboration, and every restriction removed adds risk. There are no easy resolutions in this battle. The public side of this race still moves fast, even if it's not the whole picture. New milestone announcements arrive every few months. Marketing and genuine breakthrough can be difficult to tell apart from the outside, but the trend line keeps bending in the same direction. The enthusiasm is real, the investment is massive, and the milestones are being met with increasing frequency. The race for public prestige is just as intense as the one for secret capability. Both are accelerating toward the same finish line. While the race for quantum computers accelerates, a parallel race is happening in defense. New standards, new certified hardware, an entire industry is retooling around algorithms built to resist this exact threat. Post-quantum cryptography is the new shield. It's not a guarantee of safety, but it's a head start in a race where the finish line keeps moving. Security must evolve as fast as the threat. Every piece of critical hardware is being audited and updated to survive the coming disruption. The retooling is already underway. Financial systems are racing to future-proof themselves. At the same time, central banks explore new digital currencies. Trust is the currency. Both efforts depend entirely on cryptographic trust holding steady. If the foundation fails, the cost of that mistake compounds quickly. New systems being built today carry this risk baked into their foundation. The transition to post-quantum standards is a race against time. The stability of the global economy depends on the outcome of this hidden race for security and trust. Every government racing toward this technology is also quietly preparing for the moment a rival gets there first. Contingency plans. Industrial espionage cases involving quantum research have already reached courtrooms. Stolen blueprints, smuggled components, intelligence warfare. Most cases never make major headlines. They are settled quietly, far from the public eye, but the implications are vast. Every piece of critical hardware is being audited and updated to survive the coming disruption. The retooling is already underway. Coordinating a single global migration becomes its own enormous logistical war. Timelines, regulations, and risk tolerance must be balanced. The corporate world is being re-engineered for a reality where secrecy is no longer a default, but something that must be fought for. The results of these tests will determine the strategic balance for the next generation. The silent revolution is underway. The future of joint operations is being re-evaluated for a world where the shadows have disappeared. Preparation is the only defense. Somewhere tonight, a team is closer than anyone outside that lab realizes. Somewhere else, another team believes they're still ahead. The date is set, the resources are allocated, and the finish line is coming into view for those who know where to look. A vulnerability in that coordination isn't just a data breach risk. It's a risk to whether the lights stay on across an entire region. Whoever masters both halves of this equation holds an extraordinary advantage. The shield and the sword are being forged in the same fire. The race is not just for the computer, but for the infrastructure that can survive it. The rollout is already underway. Others bury them inside defense spending categories that never get a public line item. The race is on, and the true leaders are often the ones you don't see coming. Satellite reconnaissance has become one of the few reliable ways to track this race from the outside. That energy footprint is difficult to hide completely, even in the most secretive programs. Analysts have learned to watch power grids. In a race this valuable, theft is sometimes faster than research. The fastest way to catch up is to take what others have built. The harder a location is to reach, the harder it is to watch. Secrecy is the ultimate defense in the quantum age. Funded by a patchwork of public and private sources, these labs are the engine of discovery, but they walk a careful line. Some countries have started restricting which researchers can work on the most sensitive parts of this technology. Visa reviews, topic restrictions. Background checks that didn't exist for academic research a decade ago are now standard. Talent is being sequestered by nationality. Every restriction added slows collaboration, and every restriction removed adds risk. There are no easy resolutions in this battle. The race for public prestige is just as intense as the one for secret capability. Both are accelerating toward the same finish line. The stability of the global economy depends on the outcome of this hidden race for security and trust. How much should that change our own timeline? These estimates rarely match the public research papers. It sounds extreme until you remember what's actually at stake. It's an uneasy balance that gets harder to maintain every year as the strategic value of the work rises. The race is on, and the true leaders are often the ones you don't see coming. Others bury them inside defense spending categories that never get a public line item. The race is on, and the true leaders are often the ones you don't see coming. Satellite reconnaissance has become one of the few reliable ways to track this race from the outside. That energy footprint is difficult to hide completely, even in the most secretive programs. Analysts have learned to watch power grids. In a race this valuable, theft is sometimes faster than research. The fastest way to catch up is to take what others have built. The harder a location is to reach, the harder it is to watch. Secrecy is the ultimate defense in the quantum age. Funded by a patchwork of public and private sources, these labs are the engine of discovery, but they walk a careful line. Some countries have started restricting which researchers can work on the most sensitive parts of this technology. Visa reviews, topic restrictions. Background checks that didn't exist for academic research a decade ago are now standard. Talent is being sequestered by nationality. Every restriction added slows collaboration, and every restriction removed adds risk. There are no easy resolutions in this battle. The race for public prestige is just as intense as the one for secret capability. Both are accelerating toward the same finish line. The stability of the global economy depends on the outcome of this hidden race for security and trust. How much should that change our own timeline? These estimates rarely match the public research papers. It sounds extreme until you remember what's actually at stake. It's an uneasy balance that gets harder to maintain every year as the strategic value of the work rises. The race is on, and the true leaders are often the ones you don't see coming. Others bury them inside defense spending categories that never get a public line item. The race is on, and the true leaders are often the ones you don't see coming. Satellite reconnaissance has become one of the few reliable ways to track this race from the outside. That energy footprint is difficult to hide completely, even in the most secretive programs. Analysts have learned to watch power grids. In a race this valuable, theft is sometimes faster than research. The fastest way to catch up is to take what others have built. The harder a location is to reach, the harder it is to watch. Secrecy is the ultimate defense in the quantum age. Funded by a patchwork of public and private sources, these labs are the engine of discovery, but they walk a careful line. No alarm sounds, no announcement is made. Somewhere, a machine finishes a calculation that should have taken longer than the universe has existed. It takes minutes, mere minutes, to change the world forever. This is Q-Day, and almost no one outside that room knows it just happened. The first people to know wouldn't announce it to the world. They would write a quiet memo, walk it down a hallway, and close a door. Because the moment this capability becomes public, every adversary changes their behavior overnight. Silence for a little while is worth more than the discovery itself. If this happens inside a government program, the first call doesn't go to the public. It goes up quietly, carefully through the smallest possible number of people, because what they do in the following weeks could matter more than the discovery itself. A capability this powerful is only useful for as long as nobody else knows you have it. The years of patient harvesting finally pay off. Archives that sat untouched for a decade begin opening, one file at a time. Diplomatic cables, financial records, military communications once considered permanently sealed. All of it readable now exactly as planned. Financial institutions are among the first to feel the tremor, even if they can't yet explain why. Old transaction records, long considered permanently sealed, start showing signs of exposure. Security teams scramble to understand an attack pattern that doesn't match anything in their training. Because the playbook for this kind of breach didn't exist yesterday. For corporations that delayed migration, the response is chaos dressed as procedure. Emergency meetings, legal teams pulled in before sunrise, questions nobody has fast answers to. How much of our historical data was ever protected by the old standard? And how long has it actually been exposed without anyone knowing? Healthcare systems face a different kind of reckoning. Genetic records assumed private for a lifetime are suddenly part of a much larger conversation. Notification laws written for ordinary data breaches were never built for an exposure spanning years of archived history at once. Regulators scramble just to figure out who needs to be told and what there even is left to tell them. Within government, the response moves at a speed bureaucracies rarely manage. Emergency directives, accelerated deadlines, migration plans that once spanned years suddenly compressed into months. The post-quantum standards finalized years earlier finally get the urgency they always deserved. Just years later than anyone would have liked. Military commands shift to backup protocols the moment the alert reaches them. Communication systems built years earlier specifically for this scenario finally activate for real. It's the difference between a doctrine written on paper and a doctrine tested under pressure. The nations that prepared seriously discover whether their preparation actually holds. Diplomatic communication reverts in some cases to methods decades old. Sealed pouches, hand-carried documents, channels that can't be intercepted because they never touch a network at all. It feels like stepping backward in time. But when digital trust collapses, sometimes the oldest methods become the newest solution. Infrastructure operators activate contingency plans most had hoped never to use. Manual overrides, isolated control segments, systems designed to keep running even if their digital trust layer fails entirely. The lights don't go out, but the people keeping them on now understand exactly how close that possibility actually was. Regulators move faster than they ever have on any technology mandate. Compliance deadlines that once stretched years are compressed into months. Industries that lobbied for delay suddenly find themselves racing to catch up instead. The cost of the old timeline becomes obvious to everyone at exactly the same moment. Markets react before most people fully understand what happened. Uncertainty alone is enough to move prices, even before any specific damage is confirmed. Companies seen as quantum-ready see confidence rise. Companies caught flat-footed face a very different morning. Technology companies that prepared years in advance suddenly look prescient rather than paranoid. Their migrations, once dismissed internally as overly cautious, become the reason customer trust holds. The companies that didn't prepare face a much harder conversation with their users. In moments like this, the difference between foresight and negligence becomes very public, very fast. For most ordinary people, this day looks like any other. No sirens, no visible disruption, no reason to suspect anything has changed at all. The damage, where it exists, happens in places most people will never see, which is exactly why so few outside the industry ever fully grasp how close this came. Within days, an emergency international session is convened. Not to assign blame, there's no time for that yet, but to coordinate a response. Shared timelines for migration, shared protocols for managing exposed historical data. It's the first time many of these nations have had to cooperate on something this existential, this fast. The facility responsible for the breakthrough becomes the most heavily protected site in the country overnight. Not because the danger is finished, because the machine itself and the knowledge of how to build another one is now the most valuable asset in the world. Protecting it matters as much as the discovery did in the first place. Rival nations respond with their own version of urgency. Accelerated funding, compressed timelines, a sudden willingness to take research risks once considered too dangerous. If one nation has crossed the threshold, the strategic gap created by being even slightly behind becomes unacceptable. The race doesn't end on Q-Day, it simply enters a far more dangerous phase. Within the chaos, something else becomes clear. The post-quantum systems built years in advance, dismissed by some as premature, finally prove their worth. New communications, encrypted under the new standard, remain genuinely secure even against the machine that broke everything else. The work done quietly for years turns out to have been exactly the right call. Companies that prepared properly issue calm, confident statements. We anticipated this. Our systems were already protected. Your data remains secure. It's the kind of message that only sounds simple because of years of unseen, unglamorous preparation. Trust in moments like this is the dividend that quiet diligence finally pays out. For the engineers who spent years on this migration, this is the moment their work finally gets justified. Not with applause, not with headlines. Just the quiet, private satisfaction of watching every system hold while others around them did not. It's the kind of victory that almost nobody outside the room will ever know happened. Legislatures move with a speed and unity that rarely happens around technology policy. Mandatory modernization requirements pass with little resistance. The debate that once dragged on for years about cost and urgency resolves itself in a matter of weeks. Nothing focuses political will quite like watching the alternative play out in real time. An entirely new industry accelerates almost overnight. New jobs, new degree programs, new companies built specifically around making the next transition smoother than this one. The world doesn't go back to how it was before. It rebuilds itself around a lesson that arrived far more abruptly than anyone wanted. A year later, for institutions that adapted, this becomes a footnote rather than a catastrophe. Systems rebuilt, trust restored, lessons absorbed into standard practice. For institutions that didn't adapt in time, the story looks very different. The gap between those two outcomes was never about resources. It was about whether anyone took the warning seriously. Even the oldest, most vulnerable archives eventually get resecured. It takes time, money, and an enormous amount of unglamorous engineering work. But piece by piece, the exposure that built up over years finally gets closed. The world doesn't fully recover from Q-Day so much as it learns to live differently because of it. In classrooms now, this story gets taught as a case study, not just in computer science, but in policy, economics, and international relations. A reminder that technological transitions don't wait for institutions to be ready. They simply arrive and reward whoever prepared quietly in advance. New international frameworks emerge to monitor this kind of risk going forward. Shared early warning systems, coordinated research disclosure, a recognition that no single nation can manage this alone twice. It's an imperfect system, built quickly out of necessity rather than careful planning. But it's a start, and starts are usually what come after the worst lessons. Some of the secrecy that defined this race begins to ease, at least selectively. Not because the competition has ended, but because secrecy alone didn't prevent the disruption everyone feared. A handful of programs choose limited transparency instead, betting that trust might be a stronger defense than silence. It's too early to know if that bet pays off. Even after Q-Day, the underlying race doesn't stop. New capabilities are already being planned, each one promising to push the boundary further than the last. Quantum computing's first major breakthrough wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, for an entirely new category of advantage nobody has fully mapped out yet. For most people, life simply continues. The padlock icon still appears, the transaction still goes through. The illusion of permanent security still feels intact. Most will never know how close the foundation came to shifting beneath them. And in many ways, that quiet ignorance is exactly what the new systems were built to protect. History will eventually settle on who actually crossed the line first. For now, much of that story remains classified, contested, or simply unconfirmed. What's certain is that the lock everyone trusted for 50 years did eventually break. And the world that came after looked different, not broken, but rebuilt on a foundation that finally matched the threat. Sovereignty in this new era isn't measured only in territory or military strength. It's measured in who controls the machines capable of reading or protecting everyone else's secrets. Quantum sovereignty isn't a single nation's achievement. It's the new baseline every nation now has to reach, just to keep standing where they already were. The lock that protected the modern world for half a century is gone. In its place stands a new one, built faster, tested harder, and trusted a little less blindly than the last. It will not last forever either. Nothing built on math ever does. Somewhere right now in a lab much like the one that started this story, the next race has already begun. A new lock is being designed. A new machine is being imagined to break it. History doesn't close this kind of chapter, it just turns the page. Every era believes its locks are permanent. Every era is eventually proven wrong. The only real question left is who is paying attention when it happens next. Because the next Q-Day is already being built somewhere right now, quietly. The end, Part 4, Q-Day complete. This has been a forensic investigation.